Welcome, everybody, to the Vacaville People's Forum. We'd like to welcome you to tonight's forum and the candidates here tonight running for Vacaville City Council races. We have Mark Reed, Jason Roberts, and Michael Silva. They are running for election in city council seats in odd districts. My name is John Wilkerson, lifelong resident of Vacaville. I find elections are super important because of the local issues that come up. I'd also like to now introduce Will.
Hey everyone, I'm Will McDarvey, Executive Director of Solano Pride Center, and happy to be here helping with this candidates forum. We're going to be asking all of our candidates to provide a 2-minute introductory statement about why they're running. Vacaville People's Forum would also like to note that all candidates running for City Council were invited to attend tonight's forum. However, Roy Stockton running in District 1 and Ted Fremouw running in District 5 did not respond to the invitation, and multiple requests from Vacaville People's Forum to participate after multiple attempts to contact via email and phone. So we'd like for each candidate to introduce themselves, share their relevant experience, current involvements, and why they're running for City Council. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and I will call on each of you in alphabetical order. So we'll start with Mark Reed, who's running in District 3.
Thank you, Will. My name's Mark Reed. I'm running for Vacaville City Council District 3. I've lived here in Vacaville since 1985. I've raised 6 children here. Well, I'm still raising 3 of them. I left in 1999 for a period to serve 2 enlistments in the United States Marine Corps. I came back here, started raising my family here in 2008, and I currently commute to Cupertino, California, where I manage a team of engineers, and I'm running for City Council to ensure fiscal responsibility over the next 4 years with an emphasis on public safety and to preserve our small town way of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have Jason Roberts introduce themselves, and as they're running in District 5, and to provide his 2-minute introduction.
Hi, my name is Jason Roberts. I'm running for re-election for Vacaville City Council District 5. A little bit about my background. As of September, I hit 18 years in military service. My full-time job is I'm a public health emergency manager for Yolo County, so I help coordinate with hospitals and EMS services to set up their emergency plans and help them coordinate, and also run the healthcare coalition for Yolo County. Aside from being on City Council, I also sit on the CAP Solano, the Community Action Partnership Solano, which is the county's homeless board. So on Travis Community Consortium to work with what Travis needs from the community from Solano County. I also volunteer a lot with the various veterans organizations within the county. A couple reasons I'm running is there are quite a few projects I want to see through that were not finished during my first term, such as inclusionary zoning for housing to try to get more housing for all. Emergency preparedness is always a big one. We can always improve with that. And then lastly is fiscal responsibility and smart growth for the city. Cities are constantly growing. But they always incur an expense. Development does not generate money for the city. It usually costs the city more money than it brings in. And then also with the deficit spending, we have to look at being more efficient and look at new and innovative ways in how to run the city to be responsible for the next few years, since we are moving into deficit spending for the city. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Next, we're going to have Michael Silva provide his 2-minute introduction. He's running in District 3.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Silva. The past 4 years, we've been through quite a bit. We came on when COVID-19 was at its peak. It wasn't a good time to lead, and frankly, it wasn't. Our community wasn't always represented to the best as we could have been. But many of us stood up to provide the leadership that we needed to do to keep our community united. It's been an honor to serve these past 4 years, and I look forward to serving the next 4 years as your city council member. I'm a homegrown Vacaville kid. Went to Lattice Elementary School when it was still around, Jepson, Vaca High. At 21 years old, I wanted to change my life. So I'm very grateful for the sacrifices my parents made. I grew up in the Markham neighborhood. I saw what a lot of people struggle with, that had to endure living through poverty. And one thing I just wanted to make sure that I committed my life to is making sure that I did whatever I had to do to honor the second chance I had in life, to make sure our kids had better opportunities. And if I can make a difference through public policy, to make sure that we had good jobs, to make sure we had good quality housing, to make sure that we had a good quality of life and a safe community, that's what I can do to best serve my position, not just as a father, but as a community member. So it's been an honor, and I look forward to continuing to serve with your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your introductions. I'd now like to provide information on the ground rules for the forum. This is a forum, not a debate. All candidates will get the same question, and they are to respond to the question, not other panelists. You will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Each candidate will be given a 15-minute signal as a notification of when time to wrap up the response. The order of answering the questions have been randomized and will change with each question. Candidates can ask for questions to be repeated. Every candidate will be given 30 seconds to close at the end of the forum. Finally, the Vacaville People's Forum does not make any candidate endorsements. The Vacaville People's Forum strives for impartiality, fairness, and to treat each participant with respect and dignity. We merely host a platform to have community members' questions asked and answered.
Thanks. Our first question will be presented by business owner Frank regarding your stance on cannabis dispensaries.
Hi, my name is Frank Delstone. I'm a senior tech engineer and specialist, husband, father, and entrepreneur of a small business. I was also raised here and spent a little bit more than half my life in the Allendale and District 3 areas. I've also been closely involved in the cannabis industry and its cannabis businesses and market in California, as my small business is cannabis related. And as you may know, the city of Vacaville has approved of their own cannabis program and ordinances in 2021. But the city and its citizens have yet to see any benefits or progress from the program since. Question: do you believe a cannabis program and the economic benefits from cannabis businesses can and should be utilized in Vacaville? And if so, what steps would you take if elected to put Vacaville's cannabis program on the list of priorities for the city council? Thank you.
Great. First, we're going to hear from Michael, then Jason, and then Mark.
Right. So we were headed towards approving an ordinance or doing an actual study that was getting more in depth into understanding what type of process we would go through about how we would select what cannabis stores or how many dispensaries actually would be allowed. And so things are moving along, and then something happened. A lot of different things start coming up on the city side, and they kind of got pushed off to the side. I have a strong feeling it's something that's going to come back in 2025. I think that one thing that we have to be very cognizant of is making sure that the costs that it would take to oversee and sustain this business, because there's a lot of oversight that has to be done, that there is a cost beneficial component to that. So I think that's just something that I personally think that any council should just weigh, or at least have that data to make sure that we don't, start jumping to something that's much more costly. But I will share that one of the most common things that I get asked to me privately, because there's a big taboo for certain folks that continue to use cannabis, is what is up with Vacaville? Why can't I purchase my own cannabis here in town? Why do I have to go to a neighboring town and whatnot? It is one of the most common questions that I receive from folks. And so I think it's time that we have that discussion and lay it out for the people of Vacaville. Thank you.
Jason, and then Mark.
All right. Yeah, Michael mentioned, as a city, we did look at cannabis. It's gone through a study to see where it goes and what's beneficial for the city, general revenue production. But yeah, that was a couple years ago, kind of got pushed aside with all the other stuff we had going on with council and then with city, because staff utilization is pretty key, especially because their staff is semi-limited, and then also making best use of their time. I'm definitely not opposed to it coming to the city. In my opinion, treat it the same as alcohol or cigarettes that are already within the city. And we need to do a cost benefit analysis, especially with dipping into deficit spending. If it's a valuable source of revenue that can use to help fund other programs within the city, we just have to make sure it doesn't cost us more to run with the additional oversight that's needed, whether from law enforcement, public safety, and ensure it actually does what we think it will do. But as for the use of it, I'm perfectly open to it, and we can definitely look at how it proceeds in the future. Like I said, if it is a valuable source of revenue for the city with moving in deficit spending, it should definitely be considered. Thank you.
Mark?
Yes. So, first of all, Frank, thank you for asking the question. I actually saw you speak in front of the city council at a meeting, I believe it was in April, might have been in May, and it really piqued my interest. This was not something that was on my radar, but after hearing your arguments, they were concise, they were data driven, and when I looked into some of that data, they were accurate. So, you actually brought me to the forefront of this issue, or rather brought the issue to the forefront of my attention. Um, there's some definite pros to this for me. There's the liberty for consumers. I don't partake myself, but I don't want to prohibit anybody from doing that that wants to. There's the liberty for business owners like yourself that want to conduct business in a responsible manner. And I think that is a positive to a black market solution for this. Um, the revenues obviously help the city. That's a big plus for me. So it's not something that I'm totally against. The cons that are out there, I think, can be overcome with time. The main one that I'm sure you've heard before is that it does tend to statistically lead to a property crimes increase. Currently here in California, as any homeowner can tell you, we have a property insurance crisis going on. We have property insurance companies looking for any reason to get out of existing policies so they can raise rates on homeowners. And my big fear would be that if you put a dispensary in a neighborhood, that it would give an excuse to the property insurance companies to kind of pull back on those policies, cancel them where they want, submit for increases of rates. So right now the timing is not good in my opinion for that. But when the property insurance crisis ends, I could definitely see this being a viable thing here in Vacaville. Thank you.
Thanks to Frank for their important question and for the candidates' responses.
Our next question will be presented by nonprofit owner and Vacaville resident Megan regarding the growth of Vacaville and ensuring people feel welcomed in Vacaville.
Hi, my name is Megan Dibble. My wife and I moved to Vacaville 5 years ago. We live on 60 acres near Cherry Glen and Lagoon Valley, where we run a nonprofit animal rescue. When we moved to Vacaville, we weren't sure we would be welcomed, but it happened to be the same year when the first LGBTQ plus Pride Festival was held at Andrews Park. I'll tell you, that made us feel very welcome, and we were very excited to participate. As leaders, it is crucial to foster an atmosphere of acceptance and inclusivity within our community. So, with that in mind, what specific actions will you take to ensure that Vacaville is a welcoming and inclusive community for BIPOC, queer individuals, and those on the gender spectrum, both now and in the future? Thank you.
We will first call on Jason.
All right. Yeah, this is a important question, and it's been brought to the attention of not just Vacaville, but all over the state, and I've even seen it on national news, is where Vacaville sits on being welcoming to various different type of communities. Since moving to districts, we've had the most diverse council we've ever had in the city of Vacaville. For example, I'm the first Asian American to sit on Vacaville City Council. I definitely don't want to be last. I want to see others after me, get elected into council and represent that demographic. But when it comes to LGBTQIA plus citizens within Vacaville, been at Pride the Park. I've moved to have the flag policy moved to a council decision, which we've voted to fly the flag every year. And next, we definitely have to work on the proclamation policy because that seems to hit a roadblock now. But yeah, these are my friends, my family, my neighbors. I want to see everybody in the community feel welcome and that they can be out in their community openly as who they are, not have to worry about others within the community itself. And more on like the business side of it, we're having a big push for the biotechnology and biomanufacturing, advanced manufacturing. A lot of these companies are coming from the Bay Area and moving into Vacaville. And when they see like, hey, Vacaville's not flying the Pride flag, or they didn't do a proclamation for Pride Month, I'm sure the business owners look at that as well. Their employees would be like, hey, do we really feel welcome in those communities? And so we really need to reinforce that and make sure that they know that they are welcome here. So thank you.
Next, we will hear from Mark.
Yes, Megan, thank you for your question. So Solano County and Vacaville in particular are one of the most diverse in the state. We've got a 61% diversity rate in the county. I think we do a wonderful job of welcoming all from around the world, really. And I'm very proud of that. And I think that we should continue doing a lot of what we're doing as far as the festivals and some of the stuff that the Downtown Investment District does. As far as proclamations, I know the roadblock with that, I actually do agree with the mayor on that. One, the language does have to meet legal requirements. Also, I believe that government is there to provide essential services, and I don't see proclamations for really any cause to be an essential service. Myself, I'm a veteran, disabled veteran, and I wouldn't support a Veterans Month or a Veterans Proclamation. I think there's three flags that should fly over Vacaville, and that is the United States flag, the state of California flag, and the city of Vacaville flag. And that's not to exclude anybody, but rather to show that that is the governing body that regulates the area that we're in. And it is up to the individuals to support whatever causes that they feel they should support. They have the liberty to do that. Personally, I am a big supporter of the LGBT community, but I don't think it's a function of government to go one way or the other with that. I think that should be left up to the individuals. But thank you for your question, Megan.
And lastly, we'll have Michael Silva.
Yeah, no, it's a great question because on one hand, we say we have a great community, want to have a great community. I think some of us who grew up here and fit certain demographics and certain areas, that we had different experiences growing up. So I think like for me, just with my experiences growing up here from 80s, 90s, it didn't always feel very welcomed. And I think for those who I can't relate to different individuals' experiences when we get into more of the diversity, equity, inclusion issues and topics that are very relevant to people's lives and well-being. I think it's important that the city does support our diverse community and supports and celebrates the diversity and enrichment that they bring to the culture of our city. And I think, and I believe, and I know the more that we can find ways to welcome folks that are different, where they haven't always been accepted, not historically and not everywhere throughout our own communities. If we find ways to allow them to feel welcome by allowing them to celebrate different cultures, different events, recognizing those, however the different means may be. I've been very honored to be able to not just I've been very honored to invest personally into different events, support them how I could, along with my family, and then also find ways and strategic methods to support it through different policies. One of the challenges we've actually had in the city of Vacaville is our whole event process. It's been very difficult for folks who are just grassroots efforts to put something together just to celebrate life, and that shouldn't be the case. Part of that led to inspiring the effort, the whole Brown Street Park, of how we create a space that allows for more grassroots efforts and economic opportunities for economic prosperity to transpire there. And I think that's something that we absolutely have to continue. And my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan, for that very important question. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you, candidates, for your responses.
Our next question is going to be presented by VUSD student Gus, who's concerned about traffic safety at his school.
Hi, I'm Gus. I'm a fifth grader here at Payton Elementary. As you can see, traffic is pretty bad right now. So if you get elected, what can you do to help me and my friends get safe trying to get in and out from school?
Okay, we're going to hear from Mark, Michael, and then Jason.
Gus, so that is exciting to see a young man get involved on local level politics so soon. It took me years to get to that point. So congratulations to you for that. I'm glad you asked this question. I've been looking into the safe to school routes, and I like the program. I like a lot of what I've seen. Obviously, as a fiscal conservative, I want to know what the cost involved is, but I do like that it has a very positive effect on youth health by increasing the bike and walking routes as opposed to buses and cars. As a father of 3 young children myself, I can tell you that's critical. Keeping young men and women healthy and keeping them exercising. I walk to school myself from Creekside neighborhood to Wilsey Wood every day when I was in high school. So I can tell you it's a big plus. The concern I have is the cost, because I don't know what the cost is, but that's something we could explore. And I wonder if a lot of that could be negated by parent group involvement, maybe even parents doing fundraising or donating in specific neighborhoods where these programs take place. I can tell you the statistics are very clear that the benefits for these safe to school routes over the reference schools are tremendous. There's a 10-point increase in bicycling and referencing. The students do better scholastically, they do better health-wise, and I think it's a great program. So I would definitely pursue these safe to school routes. Thank you for your question, Gus.
All right, next is Michael and then Jason.
Thanks, Gus. So the Safe Routes to School has been a program that's been around for quite a while. It allows some additional funding to help out with different small infrastructure improvement. Most recently, just a couple months ago, they actually well over the past year and a half, we put out a survey. The city put out a survey to assess where there were safety concerns on access to school sites. So they put everything in there, and then based on that, staff came back a good several months later to suggest different areas to improve. It is important to know that based on code and based on a lot of traffic engineering components to it all, that everything is designed to be up to code and everything's designed to be safe. One of the biggest challenges we have is people's behavior. And it's very frustrating because we lost a good man, we lost an officer, somebody lost their father earlier this year who was absolutely dedicated to making sure that that we had a safer community. And we absolutely want to make sure that we don't have any more tragedies. And it really takes each of us to step up and to hold ourselves accountable, to hold others accountable for the decisions that they make. That said, I know Payton has been a big concern for quite some time. Markham Elementary School, that's been a big concern. One of the benefits of that Safe Routes to School program is we were actually able to secure some funding to actually put sidewalks in. Never before did Brown Street ever have a complete sidewalk. And because of that, that allowed a kid who I didn't even know lived there, allowed a fifth grader who was in a wheelchair to be able to access his school from his side of the street for the first time in his life. And to me, those are things that are very important, and we have to keep side on how we continue to find ways, again, to improve the safety and access to our schools. Good thing, just a heads up, speed limits will be reduced to 15 miles an hour soon enough around all school zones. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Jason.
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's really important. Safety of children should be put above vast majority of things that we deal with on city council. As mentioned, Safe Routes to Schools is a major program. We've already used some of that funding to put in crosswalks and sidewalks, mostly near the Markham area. But as that was brought up is people's behavior. We can put in all the crosswalks, stop signs, flashing lights, but nothing's going to change people paying attention and speeding. So if you're texting while you're driving near a school, any of the safety measures we put in isn't going to change that human behavior. And that's what causes the significant safety issues around the schools. So with that, you have to work with the schools and the police department to ensure that we enforce these already existing rules and policies and laws that go into effect to, make people understand that, hey, this is what happens, this is safety, and just reinforce all those different things. As Michael said, we recently had a study with the city that brought up all the different areas we can improve on for every school site. The big thing is prioritizing which ones go where, because unfortunately money is finite for these projects. So we have to look at where the most need is. And people often confuse DEI with, oh, we're prioritizing race and color skin, but they often forget about the socioeconomic background pieces of it, where lower income neighborhoods are often forgotten and don't generate as much revenue, so they often get overlooked. And so it's not just about race, it's about income levels. I grew up very low income and had to walk to pretty much every school I ever attended, from elementary school through high school. And so with that is we really have to look at where the things are needed, where things have been overlooked, and who has the biggest issues within the city, and address those in a priority. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Gus. Very important one. Thanks for our candidates' responses as well.
The next question will be presented by Vacaville resident Sarah, who is concerned about energy storage in Vacaville.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I'm with the group Keep Vacaville Safe. Our group advocates for responsible energy storage siting. There are various types of energy storage, but the most commonly used includes lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion battery storage has unique fire risks. They emit toxic smoke and can burn for days. As you may be aware, last year, a large-scale lithium-ion battery storage facility was proposed in North Vacaville. Thousands of residents signed a petition, and hundreds showed up to the community meetings in opposition of the project. Earlier this year, the City Council voted 7-0 to end negotiations with the energy company. Currently, the City of Vacaville and Solano County have moratoriums on battery energy storage facilities while they craft regulations for permitting them. The city's moratorium will be lifted at some point during your term. My questions to you are: what is your stance regarding lithium-ion battery storage facilities within city limits? And if elected, would you allow them in our city? And if so, under what circumstances? Thank you.
First, we will call on Michael.
Yeah, I think I remember something about this topic that came up last year. And I'm being sarcastic here, but it was so number one, city, that particular area around that substation is a highly desired area for energy storage. And so there's different ways to look about that. Number one, I'm not interested in selling out the safety of our community. Never been interested in selling out our own folks. So in that case, as a professor of biotechnology, I focus on data. I focus on understanding why things work, focus on understanding why things don't work. And so currently we actually have a consultant going through and evaluating our entire energy plan, and different opportunities to frankly make us more energy independent. I think that's a huge path forward. But the question is centered on lithium-ion battery storage. Number one, as much as I want to give you an answer, part of the whole process was to understand where's the technology at and where we're headed. And I think we have to be very conscious of how when we come out and make stances if we don't actually have the knowledge to actually have a conversation about to see where it's at. With the people of Vacaville. Nobody wants to do anything that puts anybody unsafe. One of the questions that was asked of me was, would I feel safe to allow my kids there? There's not one decision I don't make as these past 4 years as a city council member that I wouldn't trust allowing my kids to be there home alone, even though sometimes we're not supposed to. But there's not one decision I make that I don't take the best interest of our children, most vulnerable people in mind. So I think that we have to have the data. We got to work with our citizens before we make any decisions to make sure everybody's comfortable with it on how we move forward. Thank you.
Next, we will have Jason.
Yeah, thank you. As we know from last couple of years, this is a very big, important topic. When it comes to renewable energy, whether it's wind generated, solar, whatever type of energy generation you think of, is you need a way to store that. Just pumping it just straight onto the grid doesn't help with grid stabilization or energy, because if you're producing energy when the sun's up, what do you do when the sun's down? You need some way to store at least a little bit of it. And so I'm not opposed to batteries, is more of the technology. Like lithium does have issues as a chemical piece. Lithium is a very volatile chemical and substance, so it does have issues. But there's numerous other technologies while they're coming along. Some are moving along quicker than others. For example, SMUD is using the iron flow batteries, which with that technology, it physically can't catch on fire. It's using water and salt and iron to generate electricity or store electricity. And so while it's not as efficient as lithium, it's a way we can look forward, and other ways we can store energy, because it is important. It's a key piece of infrastructure needed for renewable and green energy. We do have this study coming out and waiting to see the results of that on where we can put it, what are the appropriate types of storage and infrastructure we put in, whether it's expanding our net zero energy policy and project we have coming within the city, or if there's other places such as microgrids we can spread throughout the city to stabilize the grid and produce more equal energy, and hopefully even reduce the costs of energy to the citizens of Vacaville. So battery storage is important. I would like to see other options coming out for it, and I'm waiting to see what the result of the study is and see where we can go from there. Thanks.
And finally, Mark.
So I need to be very careful how I answer this, because non-disclosure agreements that I've signed in the past. I've worked with many of the companies researching and developing these technologies over the last 15 years across the Western United States. And I can tell you, I wouldn't put this stuff anywhere near my children at the current technology levels. And I don't foresee that changing in the next 4 years. So I have signed your pension, and you have it from me here. No, I would not vote under any circumstances to allow the best facility in Vacaville in the next 4 years. Thank you. Oh, and Sarah, thank you for your question. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, candidates, for your responses.
All right. Our next question is presented by Vacaville resident and former Parks and Rec Commissioner Keith, with concerns about Measure M funds and Parks and Rec.
Hello, my name is Keith Thompson. I am a 25-year resident of the city of Vacaville and former Parks and Recreation Commissioner. I served on the Parks and Recreation Commission from 2020 until earlier this year in 2024, which I retired to move on to other projects within the community. My question for the candidates is Measure M fund usage. What projects would you like to see completed with Measure M funds within your term? Are you aware of current projects and their capacity to be funded with Measure M funds? The Parks and Recreation Commission has approved several large projects that were also forwarded to the council for funding and approval, including the recreation center to be built at Centennial Park. In addition to that, there were other community park and neighborhood park enhancements that were approved. We have seen minimal move forward on those projects. So what is being utilized? What is the current balance of Measure M funds? How is it allocated? How is it earmarked? And what would you do to see these projects finalized and brought to the community within your timeframe? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Keith. We're going to hear from Jason, Mark, then Michael in the order for this question.
All right. Hi, yeah, thanks for the question. This is a question we've gotten a lot over the last couple of weeks because we just recently approved a park in the Brown Street area, which cost the city roughly $6 million with some other funding from the state and other grants coming through to help support that. But when it comes to Measure M, I actually recently had looked this up for another candidate questionnaire that I received. And so I like to read just a little piece of that, which came directly off the original Measure M ballot. It says the measure is a general tax. Its revenue is used for general municipal purposes such as police and fire protection, gang suppression, ambulance services, street repair, park maintenance, recreation programs, public parks, sports fields, roadway improvements, McBride Senior Center, Walter Graham Aquatic Center, the Lattice Community Center, Vacaville Performing Arts Theater, and other services and facilities for the residents. And so with that is, yeah, Parks and Rec should get their fair share to help support the community, because it's not just about providing services, it's about providing quality of life. And that's kind of what Measure M was geared for, and making sure we feel safe in the community with law enforcement and fire, but also ensuring that roadways are taken care of, that the parks are maintained so kids and families can go enjoy them. If we need new recreation facilities or performing arts facilities, or update the ones that we currently have, that's what Measure M was for. And we should make sure that all aspects of that measure are seen distributed across the city, not just in specific areas. It's up to the council to set up priorities on how that needs to be spent and where the needs are. And with going to districts, that's an important piece to where each district has a representative that we're the voice of that district, so we can speak up and represent those folks to know where that money should be spent, or bring it to the attention of council so we can help prioritize those fundings. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Next is Mark.
Yes. So originally Measure M, well, first of all, thank you, Keith, for your question. Originally Measure M was given to the voters to vote on as a temporary quarter-cent sales tax to last 5 years. And this was a result of the recession to help cover some of the expenses that, as we went into deficit spending, that were previously mentioned. It was renewed as a 3/4-cent sales tax for 20 years, which tells me that the city council back in 2012 to 2017 did not learn their lesson. Instead of adjusting their spending, they got addicted to Measure M funds. And I'm afraid that's still continuing. Deficit spending is continuing now through a good economy. The city's now relying on these funds, and we're getting ready to enter a period here the next 5 years where we're going to have $28 million in deficit spending. And those Measure M funds are projected to now be empty by, when I started this, it was 2029. I'm now hearing 2027. So I think we need to be very careful with Measure M funds and what we're spending it on. I like new parks as much as everybody else, but I don't like new financial liabilities that we're taking on when we already are having trouble covering the maintenance of our existing ones. We've got one of the promises made that to me was a big one back in 2018 was that the fleet replacement was in dire circumstances. We have not changed our budget on fleet replacement from 2.3 million since 2013. As anyone who watched the last city council meeting knows, there is currently a $3.3 million gap and the replacement for the fire department fleet in particular. And we're continuing to spend those Measure M funds that we promised for police and fire on other priorities. So to me, I would not start any new projects. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to look very seriously at cutting some of the projects in place already, in particular the Brown Street project.
Thank you. And Michael?
Yeah, measuring has always been a really important topic for a lot of folks, because when we pay taxes, we want to make sure we get the value out of them. And one of the great things that Measure M has gone towards, a good portion of it, is towards actually ensuring that we have the public safety that everybody benefits from. So we have many different positions that are going to our police department, fire department, as well as other essential city staff services, to make sure that we meet the needs and demands of our community, not just some, but for all. And then that's where it brings the other funding source. So the other unallocated funds, we've tried to find these past 4 years different ways to bring value back to our community. We have this district dollar programs, excuse me, and that allows something really simple and easy to help again address different issues. One of the first things I helped champion was making sure that our kids actually had access to more recreational programs. And at the time they had a scholarship program, but when it still cost them $200-300 a week, that's too much for a lot of families to be able to sustain. So we put out over 150,000 out of this large $16+ million annual fund. That small amount actually goes to help out at least 150+ families every year. And again, that's to make sure that kids have opportunities to grow and develop when they financially can't. And just because somebody's poor, it shouldn't mean they shouldn't have access to those type of amenities. And that's really a smaller one. There's many other projects that we continue to invest in. We had a nice surplus of Measure M funds, and same folks who were complaining about we're going bankrupt, were like, hey, now you need to spend this. Why do you have all this money? So we started looking at different ways of how we invest it. Staff, they bring back the priorities every year. The executive staff bring back the priorities every year. During the budget cycle, we decide where the funds go. And I'm very honored and proud that at least five of our city council members and a good portion of our community are committed towards investing in making sure that we follow through on promises that we made in the past, including the Brown Street project. Thank you.
All right. Thanks to Keith and all of our candidates for their answers.
Our next question will be presented by Asian Pacific American Public Affairs intern Ethan regarding promoting diversity in Solano County.
Hi, I'm Ethan Nuno, and I'm a part of APAPA. What is your plan to recognize and promote diversity in Solano County?
First, we will call on Mark.
Thank you. So did some research preparing for this, and I was really pleased with what I saw. I think I mentioned this before. Solano County has a 61% diversity rate. We are the top county in California for Black Americans as far as percentage based. We have two of the top 3 cities in California, lacking only behind Oakland, with Suisun City and Vallejo. Vacaville was not listed, so there's obviously some work we can do to be more welcoming. But I'm proud of the progress that we've made. If you look at where it was in the 1960s and the 1990s, it was about 90% Caucasian in the Bay Area. It's now quite a bit more diverse. And I have found through my experiences working with multiple diverse cultures, from Gurkhas in Nepal to Congolese and Australian mercenaries, translators from Kenya, Eritrea, Kurdistan, that the best way to include individuals of different diverse backgrounds into a cohesive unit is to listen and understand, to appreciate their history, to celebrate their culture as far as food, music, dance. I think Vacaville does an amazing job of that with the festivals that we hold downtown. I would continue to encourage that. I would be spending a lot of time as a city council member talking to the downtown investment district to see how we can look into doing more of that and bring people from all over the Bay Area to show them not only what a great town this is to shop in, but what a great town it is to live in, because we want more and more of those people. And while we are seeing trends of African Americans leaving the state and the Bay Area, those trends are actually the reverse coming into Vacaville as they leave urban areas to find better lives in suburban areas. So my time's up. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we have Michael.
Yeah, great news. A lot of the cultural events that we've been putting on in the city of Vacaville are because of the council we've had the past 4 years. And so, again, kind of referenced it earlier, a lot of us have put out a lot of our personal time, our personal money, working with city staff on how to increase more access to put on different cultural events. Again, whether that's MLK Day, whether that's the gift giveaway that Traditionalist Car Club wanted to step up and provide for the family. All of those are different ways that many others, we've had many different ways that we've helped promote more diversity and a welcoming community. That also includes Dia de los Muertos. Never before has that ever been celebrated through the city of Vacaville. And it's been done at different school sites and on a different area. But the great thing about when we get an opportunity to explore and celebrate different cultures, and different interests, is that we start seeing the value that each of us have. And again, we have one of the most diverse city councils in the history of Vacaville. And I believe all the different perspectives that we bring to the table in our discussions and how we can start looking at how we continue to expand and improve our policies to make cultural events particularly more accessible is really key. And I look forward to continue to support these efforts 4 years and beyond. Thank you.
Next up is Jason.
Yeah, there's a lot of good points already brought up. Diversity is very important for any community, and it's not just bringing in a more diverse demographic in the city. It's working with the people that are already here. Are the businesses within the city represented equally amongst people from all backgrounds? Working on the Small Business Development Center to ensure that the local mom and pop stores are representing the different cultures and different demographics in different neighborhoods. Are the schools equally diverse, or certain people getting pushed to certain areas? Is funding being pushed to certain areas more than others? It's diversity is not just the people itself, but how they're represented. So if somebody's underrepresented, that means that whole community's voice is not being heard. And as Michael brought up, and I mentioned earlier, was right now Vacaville is the most diverse council it's ever had. And as I said, I was the first Asian American on Vacaville City Council. So in the entire establishment of Vacaville's history, there's been no Asian representative within the city of Vacaville. And I mean, just in my district, there's over 400 Asian households that didn't have somebody like them representing them on council. And that goes also bring representation up to the county and the state with other electeds that we do work with that represent different levels of government. And so diversity is very, very important. And going in with that is, yeah, we are becoming more and more diverse. Vacaville is not what it was even 10 years ago, let alone 30 years ago. So it's constantly changing, and having people that are on council to represent those changes, not just in race, but age and socioeconomic backgrounds. So thank you.
Thank you, Ethan, for that very important question. And thank you, candidates, for your responses.
All right, our next question is presented by Vacaville resident Alicia with a question about development and infrastructure.
Hi, I'm Alicia Minion, and I'm a resident of Southtown. In Southtown, along Leisuretowne Road, there are thousands of approved homes that are currently under construction. Some of the important responsibilities of a city council member is making decisions regarding land use and deciding how to best grow and develop the city. So in this regard, it's important to recognize that in 2008, the city adopted a 20-year urban growth boundary, also known as the urban limit line. And if you look at this map here, this shows by the green dashes, you see the urban growth boundary, and it's 36 square miles all around the city. This boundary was incorporated into the city's general plan's land use element, which requires that lands outside the urban growth boundary be used exclusively for agriculture, open space, and parks. The problem is we currently face out of control development since the boundary expires in 2028. So my question is, if you are elected to city council, how will you control development, ensure we have infrastructure needed, including schools, and to preserve our agricultural lands, open space, and parks? Thank you.
Great question. Thanks, Alicia. We'll hear from Michael, then Jason, then Mark.
Thank you for the question. It's a very complex issue that I don't think I can answer in 2 minutes, but one of the challenges that we have, and this is across the state, that due to Prop 13, it limits the amount of revenue that cities can bring in to support those essential services such as public safety and making sure the water flows in that's supposed to, and the stuff that's supposed to go out goes the other route. On top of that, our communities, our residents are continuing to demand different services, and some of the things that are coming up here in this forum are representative of that. And so the question is, how do we protect it? One, we honor what people have voted for. We keep our community educated on what the issues are, and as proposals come up, if we that we need to consider if we should develop, the community needs to have a say in that, and our electeds need to make sure that we go through all of the different facts and take everything in consideration to make sure we make the right decisions, because once we start developing, we can't go back. The other side of that, it's the market that really drives everything. The market's going to determine how much development is going to happen or not happen. And I know a lot of folks don't want to see more development in town, but we want, as we develop, as things are developed, however that is, a lot of times we're locked into these contracts from 20 plus years ago. We need to make sure that anything that happens is there to help serve our existing residents too. And that's something that hasn't quite been done to the level of what our residents expect. And so these past 4 years, the council has been very dedicated to making sure that any development agreements come in, that there is some type of community benefit for our existing residents, that we don't forget about those us locals that have been here since the beginning. So thank you.
Okay, Jason.
Yeah, very hard topic to explain in 2 minutes, as Michael said. When it comes to developments never pay for themselves. They cost more than they generate, which is why the budget for the city can get very difficult sometimes. We get into the 20-year urban growth boundary. Yeah, it's voted in by the citizens, expires in 2028. Yeah, we have to think really hard about what we want to do with that. And one of the things that we've looked at since it's been brought to council is kind of like an all or nothing. Developers like to piecemeal little developments here and there, which makes it very difficult to get any benefit to the community. And there's no cohesive developments that span, like in certain areas of Sacramento or other states where you have long linear parks that span numerous developments. And so yeah, I really push for an all or nothing. Either all developers get on the same page and provide community benefits that the community really needs and deserves, or they don't get to build. And that's a hard thing to push, but they are working towards that. I am a big fan of green space and maintaining agricultural space. I work with Sierra Club and a few other green belt areas, big outdoors person. So I really want to maintain that. The other big thing is making sure developers are accountable, because a lot of times they'll let a development agreement go 15, 20 years and let it expire, then change what it was. For example, Southtown, where the Lakes buyer sold the property, and now it's a very different project than what was told to the neighborhood and the city 20 years ago or 15 years ago. And it makes things very, very difficult. Some of the biggest headaches we've inherited are from developments from the 90s, early 2000s. And so we have to make sure things are accountable within the developers and the developer agreements, and make sure the constituents and the city staff are aware of these different things. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark?
Yes, so Alicia, thank you for your question. And I share some of your sentiments here. When I moved to Vacaville, it was about 60,000 people. Obviously, I was a much younger child then, but it had a certain charm to it that I feel it still has to an extent, but is quickly losing. I would definitely be in favor of something along the lines of extending the border that is in place now. Obviously, you'd have to look at that at that point in time and see what the city's needs are. I mean, because I do understand also that we need homes to live in, and there's obviously more and more people coming to this area every day from the Bay Area cities. However, I do have concerns with that as well. Adam recently put out a study, Adam Team Real Estate, showing that Solano County is one of the top 12 counties in California and one of the top 50 counties in the United States for risk of elevated foreclosure crisis. So that problem may solve itself not having enough housing if we're not careful. And I would hate to see a lot of new housing built just for us to enter a 2008 type situation. Also, when I go out to Lagoon Valley and I look at what used to be Heinz Nursery, breaks my heart. And again, I understand the need for housing, but it takes away a lot of that charm that I've known all my life here in Vacaville. So in summary, I would absolutely be in favor of extending some sort of boundary like the one that's in place now. Obviously looking at what the current requirements are for the city at that time. Thank you for your question.
Thanks for your question, Alicia. Had some great responses. The following question was provided to us anonymously from an unhoused individual in Vacaville who preferred not to be on camera or to record a video. So here is the question, and we'll hear it answers from Jason, Mark, and Michael in that order. How do you plan to help with the mental health issues in our community? What do you plan to do to help with the homeless population and affordable housing for single parents? Jason?
All right. Yeah, mental health issues are very difficult topic to address. The biggest thing is to make sure services are available when they're needed, because you can't force anybody to take certain services or do certain things. Currently, I sit on CAP Solano, the Community Action Partnership Solano, which is a JPA for Solano County. So it's 2 elected officials from every city in Solano. And so we're trying to address this at a regional level right now, because each city trying to do it individually doesn't work. And you see that time and time again. So we're one of 2 counties in the entire state that have formed a JPA to address this at a regional level, where the electeds can get together and figure out how funding is distributed. So Vallejo has a much larger homeless and mental health issue than Vacaville does. And so with ARPA funding from COVID, we allocated more funding there to have navigation centers, transitional housing, because they have the biggest need, but we also allocated some to Vacaville for my friend's house, teens that are experiencing homelessness. And then for mental health is working with the community as it is and seeing what services are actually needed and which ones are being accepted by the people that are experiencing those issues. And that way we're just not throwing money at services that are not being utilized. So in essence, it's a data-driven topic, like what's needed, what's actually being utilized, and how do we reach out to the people that need those services and making sure those services are available when they actually come asking for them. But it is a very, very difficult topic to address, and it's slowly coming along, but hopefully we'll get there at some point and make sure everything within Solano County is being addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark?
Yes. So thank you for your question to the anonymous individual that asked it. This is a question, it's near and dear to me. Both my wife and I had siblings that went through periods of homelessness and suffered with substance abuse. It's so difficult on the families, so difficult on the people that know them, that are close to them. It's extremely sensitive, and it has to be a time that works for them as far as getting those individuals off the street and getting them the help they need. You can't really force it upon them, I found. I've been working a lot, well, I should say working, I've been learning a lot from the individuals that are conducting the homeless roundtable. And what I've learned from them, and I'm no expert, but is that there's a lot of compassionate people out there willing to help these people when they're ready. Recidivism is a huge problem with this, and I think we need to apply more resources in that arena. I'm a big proponent that government is not the solution. I think government's role in this is to resources and to audit where those resources are going, make sure they're being used effectively. But I believe it is the religious outreach leaders that have the most experience and the most success in this issue, and have been really going back to the period that we started first living in houses, because that's when homelessness started. So for me, the solution is to work with those outreach leaders, let them spearhead the efforts, tell government what they need, and provide it, but also make sure that they are accountable through an audit process. Thank you again for your question, and God bless you wherever you are. I hope you're safe and housed at this point.
And Michael?
Yeah, thank you. Very important question. In certain areas of town, they get a label that quote unquote all the homeless are there, and then when we try to implement different services, it tends to be in certain low income areas of town, and it makes it harder for people who invest in those areas to build wealth, and the people who need services, they're not getting them. I think for towns like City of Vacaville, it is darn near impossible to be able to support what's actually needed to help address mental health issues. That is quite often respectively, like whether it be something that was induced by drugs or just something that's biochemical of how they were born. Those are beyond the scope of any single municipality. And so I think the city council's effort that we've taken these past 4 years to support this 2x2 across the entire county is an appropriate way to start working collaboratively on how we can actually address the unique issues of whether it be somebody who needs to get detoxed, whether somebody who needs to get their mental health services met, or on the other hand, which is I believe the second part of the question, folks who just on hard times and been priced out of the market to be able to afford homes. Part of those Measure M funds and ARPA funds that we've had the past 4 years, we actually put in towards preventing homelessness. So a lot of we don't want to see families, we don't want to see kids living in cars. A couple of them are out there right now, and it's sad to see. I've been on different ride-alongs, both with our community response unit crew through the Vacaville Police Department, as well as certain representatives from the faith-based community who have dedicated quite a bit of time and resources to make sure they're fed and taken care of. So I think it's important that we continue to look at our housing, of how we increase access to that. And we've actually improved senior housing. We've approved the only 3 affordable housing projects in the past 20 years, these past 4 years. And we got to continue to do that as funding's available. Thanks.
Thanks to our community member and all of those living without shelter. And thanks for the responses.
Our next question will be presented by Vacaville resident Richard with a question about seniors and housing.
Hello, my name is Richard White. I'm a Vacaville resident. I also serve on the advisory council to the Napa Solano Area Agency on Aging and as an elected member to the California Senior Legislature. I'd like to introduce my question about older adults and homelessness with a few facts. In California, 40% of people needing shelter are over the age of 50. Older adults are the fastest growing population experiencing homelessness, many of them for the first time. In Solano County, the number of unhoused people this year increased to 1,725. This was a 46% increase over the last count conducted in 2022. A homeless update recently conducted by the city of Vacaville reported that there were an estimated 253 people in the city who were currently unhoused, 18% of whom are over the age of 65. My two-part question is this: what are your plans to secure housing and support services for the 45 older adults in Vacaville who are over the age of 65 and currently unhoused? And what are your plans to prevent older adults from becoming homeless?
First, we will hear from Mark.
Thank you for your question, Richard. Excellent question. I understand, in addition to the statistics that you mentioned, the obstacles you mentioned, there's also the issue of older ladies and gentlemen that are unhoused, often have canes and wheelchairs and things that make it tough to get them into shelters, further complicating the issue. This is something that I am learning more about. It's something I haven't really thought about. I guess I should. I have older parents, and I have an older grandfather that's 95 that we take care of. Well, he takes care of himself, but we help. So I don't have a real good answer for you. What I would most likely be doing in this situation is turning to individuals like you to learn more about the problem and get an idea of what solutions are available, what works, and then looking at other counties, other cities to find what are best practices with their elderly homeless population. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't want to BS you. And I appreciate your question. Thank you, sir.
Next up is Michael.
Yeah, important question and a hard one again to address, because in order to provide more units, that subsidy that needs to be subsidized, that funding has to come from somewhere. And the good news, and I mentioned in the last answer, that the current city council approved the first 3 affordable developments in the past 20 years. So not being able to address more affordable and attainable housing in itself has kind of set us up in this particular situation that we're in. You have folks that have busted their butts their entire lives, and by no fault of their own, quite often they just get in a really bad situation. That could have been my mom. Part of the reason, one of the reasons that I moved back sooner, as I did, after I left for college, was that something was off with my mom, and she ended up having Alzheimer's. She finally, finally respectively, was she passed away last year, and it was an ugly process. And I couldn't help but think, that one, very grateful that I was in a position to care for her. But she was 58 when she was diagnosed. I know that's not a common issue, but those things are going to continue to happen, and it puts a big strain on our existing families. It puts a strain on the system, and one of the ways that we could all pull together is to continue projects like the Pony Express, which is dedicated towards senior housing. And on top of that, there's 15 units out of that particular development that's focused on low barrier housing. So senior folks that are experiencing homelessness, if they express that they have a drive to get off the streets, they will get wraparound services, caseworker, all the essential things that they would need to help get them to where they become more independent. The other 2 projects that we approved are still waiting for some funding, and we, hopefully with interest rates dropping down, and we'll see how once people feel more comfortable with however the presidential election goes, we can see more investment in these areas to address our elders and give them the respect they deserve. Thank you.
Finally, we got Jason.
Yeah, thank you for the question. This has multiple levels on it. So when you get into seniors, a lot of seniors are on fixed incomes, like my parents. And so when you get to that and rent increases, or you have an unexpected cost that shows up, whether it's vehicle breaking down, medical expenses. Being on a fixed income can put you in a very, very tight situation. So at a local level, it's difficult besides what was presented on the council approving 3 affordable housing. We have one waiting to be built, the Oak Grove Apartments, which will be going off of Monte Vista and Orchard area. That's senior housing as well. And just making things available for them, low barrier, low cost, and making sure that that rent is affordable for their fixed incomes, or if they happen to already be unhoused, trying to find the appropriate services to get them housed. And then also, like, part of that long goes, which was brought up, was the medical issues that a lot of seniors tend to have. I mean, I'm already having medical issues. I'm only 41, so I can't even picture it'll be like another 20 or 30 years. So with that, it makes it even more difficult to get into housing, get services, let alone treat their medical issues. And further increases expenses, which makes things even more unaffordable. So addressing like healthcare and fixed income and some type of rental safety for those that are on fixed incomes is very important. But unfortunately, that's not stuff that's done at a local level. So we have to work with our state and federal electeds to try to make that type of legislation happen to protect our seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for that question regarding seniors and housing. Very important topic. And thank you, candidates, for your responses.
All right, our next question will be presented by Vacaville student and resident Mizo with a question about equity among the districts.
My name is Mizo. I go to Willis Jepson Middle School and I live in District 3. My question for you guys today is, what strategies would you use to ensure District 3, regardless of their tax revenue, receive equitable fundings for essential services? Thank you.
All right, we're going to start with Michael, then Jason, and then Mark.
So one of my goals throughout my journey is how do we break the cycle of poverty? You know, I've seen a lot of folks growing up in the Markham area endure that. Never before has the Markham neighborhood ever had representation on city council, and frankly, it shows. You have the most concentrated low-income units that are in there. The last data that I saw, 80% of residents earn less than 75% of the median income, and that makes it very difficult for any region to be able to generate the revenue that goes back into the quality of life for those areas. And that's why you have people in wheelchairs, whether it be children or elders, going against traffic, on bobbing and weaving in and out of streets, bobbing and weaving out of cars, just to be able to go shopping or go to their school. And it's, you know, for me, it's frustrating because I see people out there working, having a positive attitude, trying to create a better life, working for a better life. And as much as we want to value, as much as I value work ethic, at some point we need to have a local government that works for everybody, not just some folks, but absolutely everybody. And the way capitalism is supposed to work is that people have the opportunity when they put that work ethic in, or when sometimes some things just don't go their way, that there's opportunities for them to work themselves out of poverty. And so projects like the Brown Street project that people keep calling a park, they don't understand the importance of our ability to invest in something that allows people to be able to work themselves out of poverty, bring value into a particular area that has been used to get tens of millions of dollars these past couple decades, where other people have gotten paid, other people have made out, but the people that they continue to use and exploit, there's no benefit that's reciprocated back to them. And when we see kids like you, Mizo, you keep inspiring me to make sure that I do the best that I can, not just as a father, but as a civil leader, to make sure you get the needs met for your future.
Thank you. And Jason?
Yeah, so what I think is important about this question is, like, ensure District 3, regardless of their tax revenue, receives equitable. You see this in other cities. Vacaville's not as big of an issue as other cities have been, is yeah, we are a district representative, but our goal is make insurance services for the entire city, make sure the entire city is taken care of. We're just essentially a point of contact for our district to voice concerns and make sure people in our area voices are heard. And so when it comes to District 3, yeah, with safe routes to schools, with the Brown Street project, with the park and community center, community kitchen, is trying to put money back into that area that needs it the most. You look at you look at the city as a whole and you see where the greatest need is. And District 3, unfortunately, has an area that's been overlooked for pretty much since it's been there. My dad lived in District 3 area in the mid 90s. So yeah, I've been around that area and it hasn't changed very much at all. There's been no infrastructure, no new businesses. It's just been kind of sitting there. And the point is to help out the area, because when you help out the low income area and the portion of the city that's been overlooked, it helps in the city as a whole. So when businesses, biotechnology companies come in and look at the city, they look in how we see how we would treat our lowest income neighborhoods as reflective on how we are as a council and how we are as a city. So ensuring that that's taken care of means that we look out for everybody in our city, not just the people that have the largest property taxes or spending the most money in the city. And yeah, and making sure that the kids are taken care of in that area is a big issue, and make sure they have the educational and business opportunities that everybody else has. Thank you.
Thanks. And now Mark.
Yeah, so thank you, Miso, first of all, for asking this question. And again, excited to see a young man like you get involved in politics so young. It's something I wish that I would have done many years ago. So I'm glad you asked. In your question, you mentioned essential services, and I agree with you. This is a major concern for me. As we enter deficit spending and a period of economic uncertainty, we have to ensure that those essential services are funded. For me, that includes police, that includes fire and paramedics, especially with a aging population. I believe it's statistics I saw, 15% of Vacaville is currently over the age of 65. So as we enter the next recession period, we need to ensure that those resources are applied equally across the city where they're needed, not just based on one area or another, based on how we feel that they have been maligned or are being maligned. We need to do it based on need. And the key to doing that is ensuring that we are not spending on non-essential services and that we are focusing on balancing that budget so that we can rein it back within to where we're not having deficit spending for the next 5 years to the tune of 28 million. The current policy is to maintain a 16 to 25% budget reserve. Right now we're at 49.3, which is just about 16. I don't know if it'll stay above that through the end of this year, to be honest. And we need to make sure that as we enter this next recession, we have that cushion so that we can continue to provide these essential services to you in District 3, to my mother in District 1, to my wife's grandfather in District 2, or wherever else they're needed. So thank you for your question, and continue to stay involved, young man.
Thanks to Mizo and our candidates for their responses.
This next question comes from me. Please give specific examples of what you would like to accomplish for your particular district. And we're going to go Jason, Mark, and Michael.
All right, yeah. For my particular district, District 5, it's actually a fairly established district, one of the most established in the city of Vacaville. There's very little room for development. The last couple spots where Oak Grove is going off of Orchard and Monte Vista, and then also Lagoon Valley. Other than that, there's very few spots to develop. The big thing is District 5 does have a couple of the largest parks, in ensuring that we have the means to take care of those parks so they don't become run down and that families are able to utilize them. Maintaining the roads, And I do have a part of downtown, merchant side of downtown that encompasses City Hall up to La Wawa, that crazy 5-way intersection that we have. And so ensuring that the businesses are heard and taken care of. There's a couple areas of blight that need to be taken care of. A couple of them are in the works, and it just making Vacaville look better and function better, ensure the businesses are taken care of, partnering up with school districts and ensuring that students have safe routes to schools, that there's programs after school for them to work with, and ensuring that they're safe after school between when school ends and parents get home from work, because there's usually like a 2-hour gap there for most students, sometimes even larger. And other than that, the District 5 is fairly well off, and just maintaining, essential services for that area. Like I said, City Hall is in there, so that is a big piece. And the biggest problem I have is working with the city and developers, and not just developers, but realtors, and is the housing market. What do we do about it? Like, I think in my district, there's only 2 houses under $500,000 in the district, which makes things unaffordable for most people. And so working with that is extremely important. Thank you.
Next, we have Mark.
Yes, so gentlemen, thank you for asking this question. So what I would, sorry, the chat blew up on me here. Okay. So in terms of what I would specifically do for District 3, it's more what I would specifically do for Vacaville, but it certainly includes District 3. For me, it's all about financial responsibility. I'd like to see us balance our budget and get out of deficit spending. I'd like to see us reduce our reliance on Measure M funding. It seems to me that it's becoming addictive, and that in 2032, we're going to be going right back to the voters, this time maybe asking for a full cent tax for 40 years. I'd like to ensure that the fire department replacement fleet, the funding gap, 3.3 million, is completely funded. To me, that is an essential service. It's getting harder and harder to get those vehicles within a decent lead time. We need to ensure that there are no delays in the funding for those vehicles. And I'd like to ensure that the reserve funds that are currently right at the bare minimum of the policy are rebuilt over the next 4 years, so that if we enter another recession, like I think we're going to, we're prepared to ensure that essential government services like fire, police, street lighting, street maintenance, that those things can continue without interruption. Thank you once again for asking the question, gentlemen.
Next up, we have Michael.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, John. The District 3 is one of the most diverse, socioeconomically diverse demographics in all of Vacaville. I think it's important that residents know that anybody who's going to be elected needs to represent all of Vacaville and not just their District 3. So I need to communicate very effectively with folks that I don't only represent one neighborhood. I don't only represent one district. I don't only represent one demographic. I, as an educator, I, as somebody who's been exposed to a whole bunch of different ways of life, for better and worse, it is important that our leaders understand the different issues of how we can maintain and improve the quality of life of all of our residents. And so within District 3, if people aren't familiar with it, you have, just starting from north to south, you have the Markham area, you have downtown, you have a Jumpster Freeway. So you have between Peabody, Nuttree, and north of Marshall, so to speak. And so within there, there's a lot of different folks who come from, have different interests. So some are absolutely fine with the way things are. So let's make sure that we keep things the way they are. You have other folks that are struggling to make it. Whether it be from affordable housing to paying the bills to avoiding homelessness. I don't know how many times I get calls just about a slew of different type of issues. Some are within the capacity of us as a city, some are far beyond it. But there are people that overall enjoy the quality of life here in Vacaville, so we want to make sure that we maintain that. When it's time to tighten things up, that we do that. The good thing is we have a good cash flow in the city. And on top of that, we do have plans, staff does have plans to propose for us to consider on how we ensure that all of our constituents, all of our residents continue to get the needs that they expect and deserve. And I just want to keep finding different ways for people to actually advance their economics prosperity. Because if we cut that opportunity off, then how the heck we're going to support anything?
Thank you, candidates, for your response. Our last question will be presented by Vacaville resident Chris with a question about fiscal stability and deficits.
Hello and good evening. My name is Chris Flask. I've been a Vacaville resident for 25 years. I'm interested in posing a financial question for the candidates tonight. And this involves the city budget. So the latest forecast shows the city running a structural deficit over the next 5 years. The average deficit being about $6 million a year. While the city does have a reserve for its general fund, $30 million could really eat into that reserve and pose some fiscal stability issues for the city itself. I'm interested in understanding what your approach would be to dealing with this deficit over that time, and whether the Vacaville residents can be assured that they'll have access to the services that they need. Thank you.
Order for this question is sorry. Change the order. Is Mark, Michael, Jason.
Yeah, so at risk of sounding like a broken record here, fiscal stability is my big concern here. It's the reason I'm running. Obviously, I want to ensure that we have the money to keep the city running and keep essential services funded. You mentioned the deficit, which is extremely concerning to me. The figures I'm showing is 28 million, 30 is close. I'm showing a current reserve of 49 million. So that definitely eats into that, leaving about 19 million, which is far, far below the 16% of annual revenues that is the minimum of the policy. Some of the unfunded deficits, in addition to the 3 to 4% deficit spending that we're anticipating over the next 5 years, is the $3 million fire fleet replenishment funding, 74 million other unfunded liabilities, 11.4 million Brown Street project funding gap. Again, 6 million is coming from the state, 11.4, which I believe some of that's coming from Measure M, but other sources, which I don't know what that is. Again, Adam Team Real Estate recently released a statement putting our county at risk for elevated risk for foreclosures. We could see another 2008 type situation. I really want to make sure we're prepared for that. So this is a huge, huge concern of mine. Essential services, and then I'm going to be looking real close at what else we can cut to ensure that we bring our budget back within balance and we stop getting reliant on Measure M funds every time the budget doesn't have room for something we want. It's really been like we've given a couple of 5-year-olds a checkbook, and I think it's time to stop. That's not how we do things in Vacaville. So thank you for your question, Chris, and have a blessed day.
Next up will be Michael.
Yeah, it's a great question. We get presented with our budget every year, throughout the year, and very little people actually ever engage in it until like it's relevant to them. And so it's something that we constantly watch. We constantly evaluate, we constantly question. We have a lot of discussions, frankly, even behind the scenes, to make sure that we know what we're getting into, and having backup plans in case things, start to go awry. The good thing is it's not time to hit panic mode about budget, so I assure you that, Chris. I think one of the key things that's missed in a lot of this is how we actually support our small businesses. There's a lot of times when they're trying to invest and expand, to get permits to expand their business to better support it, or other ways to expand their opportunity to increase their economic prosperity, other opportunities to increase their wealth, that in turn brings more wealth back into our community, investing in other areas, certain areas that are of blight, that it will help encourage additional private investments to help turn those around. That's the way it's done. There's certain areas that are lower income that are going to get redeveloped at some point. Those infill developments need to make sure that they're addressing different needs as well. So if we're going to increase the amount of units here, there has to be some type of benefit that comes back to the people. So these next 4 years, as a city council member, I'm going to be pushing hard to make sure that we look at how we continue to improve our processes to make it much more business friendly. And that's just not for biotech, the particular area that I have a strong interest in and a history in, but also for our small businesses that are really the backbone of our community. Thank you.
Next up, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, fiscal responsibility is very important. There's some things that it comes down to council for priorities. We do need to get creative and innovative. This just a few months ago, we approved the net zero energy project for the city of Vacaville. So what that's going to do is offset our energy costs. So we won't be paying PG&E $5 million a year. We'll be offsetting our own costs, which over the course of 20 years will generate roughly $26 million based on projections. But the way PG&E works, they'll probably save us a lot more than that because we're currently paying some of the highest energy rates in the country. Also, we paid down some of our unfunded liabilities, additional 2.2 million over the last few years each year. So I think we put probably around 6 million now, which will save us millions on interest over the lifespan of that unfunded liability. So looking at projects like that over the long term will make us more financially stable. Yeah, short term, yeah, the revenue's not coming in like it should, but again, that short term, this is a presidential election year. Economy is almost always dipped during that year. So hopefully when the new year comes around, we'll see an uptick in revenue coming back in and make this less of an issue. And it's also looking at making the city more efficient. Like we've brought up several times from council, is looking into process analysis, program improvements, whether it's like a Lean Six Sigma or something similar to address inefficiencies and make the city run more effectively on the money that it has. And also looking at other projects like, yeah, we do have our district dollars. That is something, while I don't want to do it, we could suspend, and that's would save us 1.2 million, 1.3 million over the course of this next election term. That's something that I don't want to do, but if it comes down to it, that will save a couple $1 million over the next 4 years, and other little things like that that we can take care of. And my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for that question regarding fiscal responsibility, and thank you, candidates, for your responses.
All right, we're to our closing statements. The Vacaville People's Forum would like to thank all of our candidates for participation in tonight's forum and answering the community members' questions. We also encourage everyone to get registered to vote. Make sure that you're participating in all of our local, regional, and national elections, and please do participate as much as you can. Each candidate will now be given 30 seconds to summarize why they're running for office, their qualifications, and to make a closing statement. We'll hear from Michael, Jason, and then Mark.
Thank you, Will. And thank you, Vacaville People's Forum. Thank you to the candidates that are stepping up, to bring a different voice. I want to especially thank my family. It's been not always easy these past 4 years, and I really appreciate their continued support to continue to make a better world, not just for my kids, but for all kids. As a professor, everything I focus on is workforce development, give people the skills that they need to get good paying jobs. With those good paying jobs, we're in a better position to own a good home and start building that generational wealth. And then beyond that, we now can have a better quality of life. So I appreciate your support this November 5th. Thank you.
All right, yeah, thank you for hosting this forum again. It's always a pleasure. So what Vacaville needs now is like proven leadership, whether it's through my military, disaster response. We need to ensure that there's safety and the community is supported, and going through trying times, whether it's COVID, the LNU fire, making sure the city is prepared. Next issue we're running into is fiscal responsibility, and we need leadership to step up and ensure that some hard decisions are going to have to be made, and they're going to be willing to stand up to the adversity that comes with some of those decisions. And I think I'm the appropriate candidate for District 5 to make those decisions. Thank you.
So thank you for holding this to the Vacaville People's Forum. And thank you to the two city council members that are here tonight. I may not agree with you on everything, but I recognize it's very hard, the job you do. No one ever is able to make everybody pleased. And I recognize that you work very hard for our city. I want to thank the audience, and the next 4 years are going to offer a lot of both economic uncertainty and opportunity. And I am committed to seeing that Vacaville is prepared for either. And thank you for your time tonight, and God bless you all. God bless Vacaville.
Thank you, candidates and community members, for participating, and the community for watching. Especially want to give a shout out to the three of you for participating. I think it's valuably important. The video of tonight's forum will be available on the Vacaville People's Forum Facebook page. Also, please check out the Vacaville People's Forum Facebook page, as you will continue to get updates regarding future videos and future forums. You can find information about the November 5th general election at the Solano County Register of Voters Office. And if you are not registered to vote, you can register at vote.gov. Thank you so much.